Good morning, everybody. I'm glad you're here. We're here, and our guest is Kelly
Hayes-Raitt.
Kelly Hayes-Raitt, thank you. And she is here to speak with us about issues of leadership. Kelly has most recently been in the Middle East, but she's traveled extensively around the world dealing with issues of refugees. So thank you for coming, and Kelly, I look forward to your talk.
Thank you. Thanks, Graham. Well, it's a real pleasure to be here with you this morning, and I want to thank you all for coming out on this cold morning. I've already been told by one person that if he knew it was this cold, he might have reconsidered. So I truly appreciate that you're here. I am Kelly Hayes-Raitt. I live in Los Angeles, and I'm traveling through Nashville right now doing a talk about 2 trips that I took to Iraq in 2003. One just before the war started, and then I went back to Iraq shortly after the invasion and occupation to find some of the people who had touched me, so that I had an opportunity to bring those stories back to the United States. Since then, I've been working on a book that puts a human face on our foreign policies. But today, it's my pleasure to be here to talk about leadership, and I really want to thank you, Graham, for asking me to do this, because it started me thinking about what leadership means to me, which is not something I've really given much thought. So I do have some prepared remarks here, and I'm just going to go through this. It took Google less than half a second to come up with 173 million hits for leadership. Google leadership quotes and 413 possibilities emerge. So frankly, what more can I say about leadership that hasn't already been said? Furthermore, 3 years ago, I was standing in front of audiences nearly every night, extolling my past leadership, sparking imaginations about my future leadership, trying to convince people I was a bigger leader, a better leader, looking and acting and speaking as I'd been taught leaders look, act, and sound. I was a candidate for the State Assembly in California. I was all the things we're taught leaders are: goal-oriented, focused, inspiring, visionary, able to listen, and willing to allow others to shine. I had a great campaign going. I knocked on 3,000 doors. I conducted over 100 house parties. I raised over $300,000, 60% of which came from voters who gave $100 or less. Beth, you know what that means. Right. Martin Sheen wrote a letter endorsing me as a peace leader. Don Henley and his wife donated $13,000 acknowledging my environmental leadership. Wendy Malick, in her best Nina Van Horn voice, recorded a phone message to voters extolling my work as a women's rights leader. I was, after all, a leading candidate. Right up until the moment I lost. I know there are schools of thought that talk about leadership being about unshakable fortitude or a can-do attitude or a resilient gratitude. Excuse my French, but that's bullshit. In our society, if you don't win, you lose. In our society, if you are not elected to lead, you are relegated to follow. I stand before you today as society's definition of a loser who is not elected to lead. But I am a better leader today. So how does one go from leading to losing and back to leading again? So I want to ask you, I want to just open this up for conversation. What's your definition of leadership? Anybody? Someone who inspires you. Okay. That's what a leader does. I want to hear what the definition of leadership is. I'll really push you on this. Somebody else. Definition of leader. Not what a leader does or what the characteristics of a leader, but what defines leadership? One who brings the best out of people. Okay, that's what a leader does. Right? Guidance. Okay, that's again what a leader does. So we're defining by doing rather than defining by being. And I'm asking you to define the being definition of what a leader is. This is hard. I spent a lot of time on this.
An individual that exercises a presence that empowers others.
Okay, we're saying the same things. It's good. I love what you're saying. But
Are you getting at basically somebody who has a group of followers?
Yes.
It depends on what you want to define leadership as, I guess.
Right. But if we're talking about leaders being leaders, right, we can have a lot of people who inspire. We have a lot of people who do different things. But in terms of a clinical definition of leadership, we might define that by someone who has followers. Right? So what's the definition of a follower? I know, I was stymied by this too. Someone who's willing to be led. That's right, right. So we end up with this sort of circular definition about leaders and followers. So can I ask you this? Can a leader be a leader without followers? Not by definition.
Doesn't
Okay.
work in my house.
I wouldn't want to be that leader.
All right, who says yes, that it is possible to be a leader without followers?
I think it's a loaded question.
Okay.
This is semantic confusion on the term leadership and whether or not being, it's just the overlap of words.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Definitions.
You can be a visionary, but I'm not quite sure you can be a leader within the context of the definition.
All right. So we're really struggling with the definition of leadership and what leadership actually means.
Well, it's a verb, right, to lead. So,
Well, leadership's a noun, no.
yes, but I mean, but it's got, I'm just going, if no one's following, I don't know how you can be leading
Okay.
in some way.
Mm-hmm. So your answer to that question is no. You're on the no side of that question.
Yes.
You've had lots of coffee this morning, Graham. You're good, man.
From an academic perspective, the leadership class I took last semester, Grant, G-R-I-N-T, he's an author that writes on just leadership, and he actually said in his book that there isn't actually an academic definition of leadership, and that many people think they have it, but no one actually has hit it on the head yet. That was
Oh, I like that.
That's what he said. He said it's still, there's ambiguity as to what the definition actually is.
I think there is a lot of ambiguity because in our society we do tend to sort of label it based on how we think a leader should be, what we think a leader should be doing in terms of having vision or inspiration or motivation or all these other kinds of things, rather than allowing someone's inner leadership to shine through. And that's what I'd like to talk about today. I'd like to broaden our traditional definition of leadership because today I'm really more interested in my life in exploring the process of leadership. So I've come to believe that being a leader has nothing to do with external responses, such as followers, or such as people who are inspired by my vision. I believe leadership is the willingness and the ability to be myself, to share my core self with others, and to allow them to do the same. Let me say that again. Leadership is the willingness and the ability to share one's core self with others and to allow them to do the same. So that's a definition of leadership I'd like to throw out on the table today and have a little discussion about. What I'm doing in my life since I've run for office is something entirely different. I'm beginning to share my core self selflessly, and so I no longer shape myself to how the world receives me. As I have become able and willing to give myself more freely, honestly and authentically, without regard to how I will be received, I have become a better leader in my own life. And I've become a better follower. Just as light is the absence of darkness, and darkness then is the absence of light, so too I believe are the concepts of leading and following. I believe the best leaders are the best followers, and the best followers are the best leaders. By learning to be a better leader, better follower, I've stumbled into my own soul's desire and emerged as a better leader in my own life. By being a better leader in my own life, I've improved my faith in following. So I stand before you today as a fabulous follower and a more authentic leader. But let me just backtrack for a minute, because I kind of circled around. I felt like I was doing one of those little Infinity 8 things, right? Kind of moving here and then moving here and moving back again. So let me just backtrack. The best leaders, those who share their core selves authentically without regard to how the world receives them, those best leaders are the best followers, the people who are willing to follow their own instincts, their own inner guidance, and their own angels who have been put in their lives around them. People who are able to follow that within themselves, become better leaders within themselves. The best followers are the best leaders, the best people who recognize the challenges and limitations in society's traditional leadership and are willing to shore those leaders up rather than tear them down. And in so doing, they become better leaders in their own right. Once I recognized that leading and following are simply interchangeable roles played out in any given moment, and once I accepted that I embody both roles simultaneously, I more fully embraced my own natural, authentic leadership, rather than trying to prove my leadership qualities as society defines them. As a candidate, I was out there proving to you that I was a fantastic leader, had been, would be, will be, end-all, be-all in leadership. So it was about proving. It was about inspiring. It was about motivating. My leadership depended on your reaction to me. If you weren't interested in following me, if you weren't inspired by me, motivated by me, I wasn't a leader to you. So now, after I lost my campaign and I've stepped back from that, I'm looking to find, I don't want to sound too California here, but my inner leader, right? And find the places that I can follow within me so that I am leading my own life. No matter what you all think of me, no matter whether you want to follow me or not. And that has made me a stronger leader. So I've had to ask myself, what does lead me? What do I listen to inside me? I know I'm standing here in front of a wonderful Father and divinity students, and I wish I could easily answer that God leads me, or that Spirit or divine intervention does. But the truth is, I really get few knock-me-over-the-head messages from the Almighty. Most of my nudges are more subtle and are felt rather than really thought. So I've had to pay more attention to what's going on feeling-wise inside me, which has nothing to do with what you think about me and whether you're going to lead me. It's a whole different paradigm in my world and how I think. So as I've considered what leads me, as I've considered what allows me to share myself more authentically, I've become more attuned to embracing three things. Number one, attention, focus, and inattention. Okay. Number two, time. And number three, change. I'm going to take each one of these. Traditionally, leaders are taught to manage attention, time, and change, as if attention, time, and change are unruly children pulling at our pant legs. They aren't. Attention, time, and change are really guides for us to follow in order to unleash our own inner leaders. So now in my life, I am a little bit better about allowing attention, time, and change to be the language the divine uses to speak to me and through me and to lead me. As I've considered what leads me, as I've considered what allows me to share myself more authentically, I have become more attuned to embracing attention. You know, like all of us, a lot of interesting possibilities cross my desk every day. Some of those opportunities I respond to immediately and effortlessly, and I could have looked back on that and think, wow, I can't even imagine that I applied for that or that I actually followed through on that. It just happened so quickly. Other possibilities that cross my path pull and tug at me and prove what a fantastic procrastinator I can be. And I spend an awful lot of time beating myself up because I don't pursue these things that have crossed my path. But I've taken a step back in my life, and I've learned to allow the things that I don't pursue to be indicators that I'm just not meant to be moving in that direction. So some of those things, you know, kind of sound good at the beginning, right? I may have a good first date with that possibility, full of promise and newness and intrigue. But if I don't find myself following through, I've learned to spend less time chastising myself and more time developing the second dates with the possibilities whose follow-through feels effortless. On the other hand, my thoughts, if I leave them unattended and don't have attention to my thoughts, I dwell on what I should be doing, what I could be doing. What I've learned is that if what my mind thinks I should be or could be doing were truly meant to be, I'd already be doing them. So once I was able to release the ideas of I should be doing this or I could be doing this, I could then turn my attention to the things that really drew me and to the things that I really pursued effortlessly. And that was the way that I listened, followed my own attention inside me. That's something that's very different than a lot of the traditional concepts of leadership that talk about learning how to focus, how to manage focus, how to manage attention. So this is a step back from that for me. And I had that a lot in my campaign. Things were coming at me, I was told you can't focus on them. Things were coming at me, I was told you must focus on them. So by not looking at that external emphasis on what I should be or could be doing and just following it for myself, that's allowed me to become a better leader. There are ways that I have embraced attention and inattention to free myself of guilt, obligation, and that nagging should voice in the back of my head, so I can wean myself of society's expectations and its demands of me as a leader. The result has been that I've had more time to react to coincidences and unexpected possibilities, like being here in Nashville, that support and develop my ability to share myself authentically. Time. As I have considered what leads me, as I have considered what allows me to share myself more authentically, I have become more attuned to embracing time. How many times have we said, I don't have time, when what we really mean is, I don't choose to spend my time this way? Such a difference. One response, I don't have time, shows how time makes decisions for me. That response reflects scarcity. The other response, I choose not to spend my time this way, shows how I make decisions in my own life. This response reflects abundance of time. The more frequently I've chosen that my time is abundant and is determined by my inner choices and not by outside circumstances, the more I've been true to my authentic self, my inner leader. Change. As I've considered what leads me, as I've considered what allows me to share myself more authentically, I've become more attuned to embracing change. I've made a really major conceptual shift around this because a lot of the literature that's out there around leadership is about recognizing change, managing change, foreseeing change, getting ready to be ahead of the change. So I started thinking about what change means, and I've lived my life doing social change. So my life has all been about change. We've just gone through a presidential campaign that was about change and hope, right? I did a campaign that was about change and hope. So I've talked a lot about change, but I've never really thought about it. There is one experience that each of us in this room has in common that was very primal, that gave us our first indication about change. Anybody want to try to guess what that is?
Coming out of the womb.
A little later.
Water to air.
Give it about 20 seconds later. Baby needs a diaper change. Right. Now, as a baby, each of us associated change with getting clean and dry. It was good, right? It was nirvana, but everyone around us scrunched up their noses and said, do I have to change her? So I developed conflicting views about change. My instincts told me change is clean and fresh and comfortable, but I was being told by the outside world that change is undesirable, inconvenient, messy. Now that I've embraced change in my life, it's about embracing change for me isn't about reframing a conflict of crisis, which is a lot of what people talk about when they talk about managing change. They talk about reframing it, reframing a conflict or a crisis into an opportunity, that yin-yang. I feel that embracing change is about fully realizing that change is inherently our natural state of being. That change is fresh, it's clean, it's comfortable. As adults, hearing those ancient scrunched-nosed people unhappy about changing us, we often force change in our own lives by creating crises that give us excuses to finally make the changes. But I think if we are able and willing to embrace change as a natural state, we unleash our natural, authentic inner leaders. As I follow change and the change that's happening around me, I become a better leader in my own life. If we can relish change in our own DNA, we can be more authentic leaders and allow others to be more authentic in their lives. So embracing attention as guides to what my soul wants, embracing time as a reflection of my own choices, and embracing change as my soul's most desirable state are three tools I've used to embrace my own authentic leadership. So let me just recap for a minute. My definition of leadership is that leadership is the ability to be yourself, to share your core self with others, and to allow others to do the same. It's this group consciousness of leadership that can expand the ways we are each leaders to ourselves and to each other, and that acknowledges the leadership in those around us. Today, I'm leading my own life, and I'm doing that by listening to what my soul's desire is inside me. And I feel that that's the way God speaks through me. So as I become a better follower of what's happening inside me, I become a better leader in our society. I'm going to just end this with something that I hope I hope you'll do with me. My favorite part in church, I'm a Catholic, my favorite part in church is when I turn to fellow parishioners and shake their hands and wish that peace be with them. I'd like you right now to turn to the people near you, to shake their hands and look at them and authentically thank them for their leadership. Just to turn right now, if you would, just turn to the people next to you and say thank you for your leadership. Thank you for your leadership. Thank you for your leadership. Peace be with you. Thank you. Thank you. So I just would like to thank you all. We got a group thank you happening over here. Thank you. I want to thank you all for your leadership and for being here today and for being someone who really wants to find a way to be a leader differently in our society today. Because we don't just need leaders today. We need new leaders. We need different leaders. We need leaders who see leadership as a way of expanding power and empowering others rather than gathering power and gathering followers. So thank you very much for your attention today. Sure. So I don't know if we have any questions about this. I know we've got a little bit of time, and then I can tell you a little bit more about what I'm doing now in my life if you like. But that's sort of an abstract speech.
I'd like to have a conversation with her.
Yeah, I would too.